This is the Gutsy Health Podcast with Janique and Tristan Roney. Hey guys, before we get started on this episode, we just want to mention a few things.
First, content warning. We are talking about cancer. And for some people, that all by itself can be a little bit triggering. But more specifically, as we get into talking about, this is an interview with Monica Draper, who has this incredible story about healing from cancer. We don't want you to get the wrong idea, though.
Mm-hmm. What we want you to understand is that everyone's path is different. Everyone's cancer journey is different. So what she did isn't necessarily right for you or for a loved one that you know. Please take really good care of yourselves emotionally throughout this episode. It's one of my favorite episodes we have recorded, but we do want to be really sensitive to your experiences and not put cancer in a box and not tell everyone that everyone fits in this box. We never want to do that to you. We never want you to feel that way. We want you to always approach your journey from a really authentic space.
One thing we will adamantly say to everybody, no matter what type of cancer treatment you decide to pursue, is that it needs to come from you. Exactly. And by you, I mean actually the cancer patient. But you consult with the people around you, right? Your doctors, your loved ones, whatever other people you decide to consult with. But that's all they are, is consultants. They are not decision makers.
Exactly.
Ultimately, it needs to come from you, and it needs to be something you feel good about.
Exactly. And the feeling good about being the key part there. So never feel like you don't have power or say in your journey. Your doctors need to be on board with you and your plan. And like Tristan said, they're just consultants. You're the one that should be calling the shots always. So,
that's right. You don't let anybody take your power from you, including us.
Exactly. So we really hope you enjoy this episode. We really enjoyed recording it.
All right. See ya.
Hey, you guys. Welcome back to the Gutsy Health Podcast.
Welcome to another episode.
We have a fantastic lineup for you today because our guest speaker today is Monica Draper, and she has an incredible story that she needs you guys to hear. Well, I need you guys to hear.
We really want you to hear it.
Because we met on Instagram, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And you started telling me a little bit about your story, and then I was like, we need to do a podcast on this.
Yeah.
That's how it went down, right? Uh-huh. Okay. So
I think we've only really exchanged like 10 interactions.
Right. But
I feel like I really know you guys.
Yeah. Well, when you walked in the house, I'm like, you feel familiar to me, and maybe it's because of the interactions online. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we're best friends now. So
we are. It's all good.
I feel like some romantic music should start playing in the background.
Well, okay. So within those 10 interactions, please tell everyone what it is about your story that is just so wow that we need every nitty gritty detail of it today.
So when I was about 5 years old, my mom started feeling like there was something wrong with me. I had no visible signs of anything, but for 5 years, she kept making doctors do every test she could think of. And then one morning when I was 10, so about 25 years ago in October, she woke up and told my dad it's her thyroid. Something's wrong with her thyroid.
Wow.
And the doctors immediately were like, that doesn't make any sense. She's too young for thyroid issues. But my mom forced them to do testing. And immediately we get a call from Primary Children saying, you've got to get her up here tomorrow.
Wow.
When we get up to here, they tell my parents, oh, we'll just do a biopsy. It's probably nothing. So basically my thyroid globulin levels and TSH, all of them are just completely out of whack, like in the thousands, and so they thought, well, it can't be that bad. They got in and it was supposed to be a half-hour biopsy. Ended up being a 19-hour surgery.
What?
Oh my.
Yeah. My parents had no clue what was happening because they didn't even have time to come out and tell my parents. Like,
oh my gosh.
They just immediately brought in surgeons, and they were like, I think it was about 6 hours into surgery, they finally came out and told my parents what was happening. So my mom and dad were just like freaking out.
So there was no like informed consent or anything. They're like, we're just doing this without permission.
Yeah.
Wait. So what happened? So what was going on?
They got in there. They went in to do the biopsy, and as soon as they took it, they could see that there was cancer. Wow. And so they just opened me up. And as soon as they opened me up, initially what they told my parents was the scar will be like an inch. Mm-hmm. Well, if you were to look at my neck now, I've got 3 gigantic, almost side to side, scars because they had to get down into my chest. They had to they scraped my voice box, vocal cords, everything because there was just cancer everywhere.
Are you serious?
Oh. So it had already spread beyond the thyroid.
Everywhere.
And you guys need to know, like, thyroid cancer in kids is extremely rare. Like, it doesn't happen.
Like, at that time, they had no record ever of anyone younger than I think it was 25 or something.
Unbelievable.
That had cancer.
Yikes.
Like mine.
Wow.
And
so what were the symptoms that you were having that your mom picked up on? And this is what I try to, you guys, intuition, mom's intuition, do not dumb that down ever, because you guys are a lot smarter and more in tune than you realize. So what was it that your mom kept picking up over 5 years?
She said she would literally just look at me outside playing and just get this sick feeling in her stomach.
Wow.
That's incredible.
For 5 years. She's like, I was never sick. I was never a sickly child. I didn't even get colds because I was healthy, so to speak.
I have goosebumps all over my body right now. That's amazing.
Something to know here, if you as a mother spend 5 years telling people there's something wrong with my child and they can't find anything wrong with your child, they are going to think the most terrible things about you, right?
Bingo.
Munchausen by proxy is what comes to mind.
Everybody would tell my mom, you're crazy. Mm-hmm. You need to calm down. We need to put you on medication.
Wow.
And she was like, no, it wasn't with any of my other siblings. It was literally just me. Mm-hmm. And when they found it, they basically said, had it even been another month, it would have been inoperable. There would have been no way to even take a stab at this.
Yeah.
Wow.
So one of my followers on Instagram sent me an article on how doctors are now screening for, and they call it abusive moms, medically abusive moms, because they're saying that moms that use big medical words and are constantly worried about their child's health, they're calling those moms abusive.
So basically, if you like to be educated on what's happening with your health and the health of your children, and if you are willing to stand up to the medical establishment, you get a big red flag.
Yeah.
And they treat you
you're not being
huge
protective.
flag.
I think my mom was the leading mother on that though, because if you were to read my medical files, which I have now that I'm older, I read them all when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
And over they say how crazy my mom is, how she's going to kill me, how her persistence.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah. That.
Jeez.
So
bless her heart.
So
seriously.
what happened was my surgery, went well, I guess. But they basically said she'll never be able to talk.
Wow.
She'll be lucky to move her neck. Just very basic living things were not going to happen anymore.
Wow.
Because they had scraped everything so deeply and had to get really in there. And so immediately after surgery, I remember waking up and looking at the clock and I thought it was 7 hours later because of the time. Yeah. But it was 19 hours later. And I looked up at my dad and I was like, what time is it? Mm-hmm. And they just started crying and, cause I was talking cause my mom and dad kept saying, she's going to be fine. She's going to be fine. And I remember going into the biopsy, having the intuitive feeling that I'm going to be fine. Mm-hmm. And I kept telling my mom, you don't need to cry. I'll be fine.
Yeah. You were 10.
I was 10. I never once cried about it because I remember just having this sense of peace of this is just something you have to go through to help other people eventually.
Amazing.
And, God bless my mom. She goes full force into research.
Yeah.
And we had I think it was about 2 months for my body to try to heal from surgery before my first radiation treatment. Mm-hmm. And my mom back then, 25 years ago, you would just take a radioactive pill. It didn't matter how big you were, how much you weighed, how tall you were, whatever. So they were going to dose me with the same amount that like a 300-pound, 6'4" man would get.
Right.
And I was 4'2" because I was super abnormally small because my thyroid hadn't been working, and like 80 pounds, you know? And so my mom comes into my first radiation treatment and says, "You're going to split that pill in thirds.
Amazing.
You're going to give it to her, and then we're going to hit it again in 4 weeks."
Wow.
So what they wanted to do was a one treatment every 3 months.
Yeah.
And my mom said, "No, you're going to split it up and you're going to do thirds."
So how did the doctors react to her doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, they were pissed.
Of
And
course they were.
"You don't know what you're talking about. This isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Like, we have one shot to save her and you're going to ruin that."
Wow.
And
Sorry, you probably already said this, but this is like 1995.
1994 was when it
94, okay.
first started. Yeah.
So in the 90s.
Yeah.
Not that long ago, really.
So not that long ago, but long enough ago that it was still not normal for people to even try to stand up to
Oh, yeah.
the medical
Right.
professionals.
Absolutely.
Your mom was way ahead of the game. Like way. Unbelievable. And like trying to do research back in the 90s.
I know. How do you do that?
No internet, really.
You have to live at the library or something,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
I mean, and you know, my mom's from Argentina and was raised around very holistically based practices. Like, her family was wealthy. They had, you know, a lot of access to a lot of things, but they were raised very like clean living, like,
Yeah.
I mean, all the things. She was raised around a lot of gypsies. So there was a lot of different Eastern medicine practices in her life.
Yeah.
Like oils, like, were huge already for her.
Yeah.
Clean eating, like juicing.
Yeah.
And so when I got sick, I mean, bless my mother's heart, she would spend 3 hours a morning juicing because back then it wasn't easy.
Yeah. They didn't have fancy machines like they do now.
Oh, man.
You know, I mean, everything was organic. My parents built a whole new house. Like, my parents, when I got sick, by some act of God, had just retired in their 30s. Like, we were getting ready to move to Argentina. They had a couple mil in the bank. Like, life was good.
Yeah.
Well, because my cancer was so rare, the insurance companies were able to deny all the treatment.
That's unbelievable.
And so my parents went full-fledged into like, they built a new house to avoid as many carcinogens as possible. They removed, like, I had no carpet in our house. We had, the walls were built out of like hay and tires. And like, my parents did all this crazy research of ways to like eliminate you know, toxins.
So looking back, was that a blessing in disguise that you were denied treatments?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, so my parents had to pay out of pocket every time there was a treatment.
Oh, any kind of treatment.
So they still did them.
They still did them.
Yeah.
In case anyone out there still has this misguided belief that the insurance companies are here to protect us, this is evidence, right? A 10-year-old child is diagnosed with cancer. There is no question that this diagnosis is real. They've done the surgery and seen it. And the insurance company still weasels its way out of paying for the treatments.
That's exactly what it is. It's weaseling.
It's totally weaseling.
Like,
absolutely.
Like, oh, sorry, too bad, because this is so rare.
It's not like
deny it.
It's not like Monica's parents had fallen behind on their insurance premiums or that they were trying to do something really weird and out of the mainstream.
Yeah.
It was simply that this was a rare diagnosis that was not in an official book somewhere. And so they said, sorry guys, you're on your own with this one.
This doesn't
We're going to
fall
let a
within
10-year-old
normal.
child die.
Yeah.
And
like, I literally remember walking into treatments and my dad having to turn over his credit card before they would take me back.
Oh my
Because they knew like they weren't going to get paid by the insurance company.
Yeah.
And this was, of course, in the days before GoFundMe. So it's not like your parents could put up a page.
No.
And I mean, these days, hopefully they would just be flooded with people that want to help. But
I mean, they were denied by like the Ronald McDonald House for stay, like all sorts of stuff. It was like insanity. My poor parents were raising 3 other kids, but like,
and hemorrhaging money.
Trying to keep everything afloat. And like, and so on top of like paying for my treatments, my parents also started every sort of holistic treatment they could think of. I mean, I had a different practitioner come into my house almost every day.
That's amazing.
which back then like you said, to your point, like how did they get access to all these people? I don't know. But my mom, and at the time we lived in Blanding, Utah, which is like,
oh, wow.
Tiny place.
I don't even know where that is. Yeah. And I've lived in Utah for like,
and this
over
was
10
25 years ago.
It's by the four corners. Like we were in the middle of nowhere. And so we were there 2 years. And then my parents moved my whole family to St. George because there was a cancer treatment center there.
Wow.
But yeah, it's just amazing. Like,
wow,
the things they were able to do. And so basically at 14, the doctor said, it's in her lungs. It's now in her other organs. Like, we can't stop this.
Wow. So what were the treatments that you were doing? You were doing the radioactive.
Just radiation.
Oh, just radiation.
So chemo, for whatever reason, they didn't think would work on anything.
Thank Kevin. Seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably saved your life.
And that's why, so at 14, it had spread so far that they were just like, we can't stop it, but we can try chemo. And my mom and dad said no.
And I just want to give you guys a price on chemo. So I know specifically for Tristan's chemo, it was about $50,000 per infusion. So the normal protocol for like colorectal cancer is minimum 12 infusions. So that times
$600,000.
Yeah, it's just over $500,000. Like,
but
that's
I
a lot
only
of money.
did 4. So
you only did 4. I know,
I was
but
cheap.
the other other people, right? Like, I know.
That's right.
Insurance companies loved you. No, but it's so. We're not talking like maybe $10,000, $50,000 an infusion. So sorry, I cut you off. So,
so at 14, they basically said we've maxed out our radiation.
What did they radiate, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, it was just a pill. So you took the pill and your whole body would go radioactive.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Oh, interesting.
So I would be in the hospital for about a week. I actually got it down to where I learned if I didn't eat food and I just drank a ton of water, I could get out of there in 2 to 3 days.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
What?
So you're starving yourself.
Basically, because even if I ate, I would throw up.
Wow.
So even if I threw up, they came in and made me take a new dose.
They didn't know you weren't eating? Oh gosh.
I actually got to the point where I told them not to bring food into the room.
Wow.
Like I would take in like hard candies to suck on and stuff because your mouth gets so dry. But there was times where my TV was broken because anything you brought in there would have to either be burned or be set aside for.
How did they administer the pill to you? Because it's so radioactive.
So they're in basically a hazmat suit.
Oh no.
Oh my gosh.
Talk about like at 10 being like, what in the actual hell is happening?
Right.
Because you're like,
where's my hazmat suit?
Parents are behind like a glass wall.
No one can see you
no
for days.
one can see you for days. And there's this guy that's not friendly at all, right? That's just like in this hazmat suit with these giant gloves on and is like with these tweezer things and handing you this pill and saying, okay, take this and don't throw it up.
Oh my gosh.
So real quick reality check here. We are sitting in a room with Monica. She looks perfectly healthy and alive. So this had a happy outcome to it, right? So us kind of laughing as we're going into these gruesome details is because we know how the story ends.
Yeah.
But this really in reality is just an awful, awful thing.
It's
I
terrible.
cannot imagine as a 10-year-old child, a 12, 14-year-old child going through all of this and coming out intact. The amount of trauma must have been just overwhelming.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting the older you get. And like, I have 2 kids now, which also
A miracle.
Miracle babies. Cause I was given less than 1% chance to ever have my own kids. And
Wow.
if they were to be born, they would be ill is what I was told, but they're both perfectly healthy and happy and amazing.
So amazing.
But having my daughter be basically the same age I was 25 years ago when this all started, like this year has been so much inner child healing. And that's what finally brought me to this point of being able to talk about it openly is I look at her, I look at what my poor mother was going through. I mean, and my dad, obviously, but like being a mom now and seeing that and having a whole new appreciation of like, you literally saved my life. Like, and what I think was even more powerful than everything my mom did was that my parents gave me positive reinforcement.
Oh my gosh.
There was never
Beautiful.
like hey, you're going to die, or like they never cried about like, this is the end of your life. It was, what do you want to do with your life?
Yeah.
Where do you want to go? What do you want to be? Like, we never talked in terms of this is going to win.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And I think to me, that's the most important take from it all is raising our children to know their bodies well enough and to be grounded enough that they know that they're more powerful than any disease.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
So backing up, because there's still more to this story.
There's so much to the story.
We kind of jumped out at the critical point there.
I keep getting chills. Like every time you like load a new, you guys, I don't know any of this because we've just had these brief encounters. So I'm hearing this for the first time as well. And I just keep getting chills everywhere. Sorry, keep going. Go.
Yeah, no. Honestly, this whole thing is so incredible. So you're in the middle of this. Things are super dire. Maybe one of the really positive things happening for you is that you are not necessarily intentionally, but you're doing some water fasts throughout this whole process, right? 2 to 3 day water fasts, which we now know are incredibly helpful for fighting cancer and all kinds of immune benefits. But at the time it was just because you didn't want to be in the hospital.
Just because I was like, I'm done with this. Peace out.
It's just by default. That's so amazing. Like talk about like divine intervention almost.
And that's what I feel like it is. I do feel like my body was purposely making me throw it up every time I would eat to like teach me how
to preserve itself. Yes.
And like, you know, my parents would worry a little bit because I wasn't eating. And I mean, I was so small that they were worried that, you know, I was getting malnourished and all these things. But my mom, as soon as I would get out of the hospital, it would be all, you know, juicing and everything was natural. And like, she went overboard to make sure that I replenished my nutrients and my body's needs. And so I think it did work, you know, exactly how you're saying is because I didn't come out of the hospital. My parents didn't say, okay, let's go to McDonald's. Yeah. It was, okay, here's a juice. Here's, you know, some nuts. Here's like these berries.
Whole foods.
All whole foods.
Right?
I mean, funny enough, my parents had owned a gas station growing up and we were never allowed to get anything from the gas station.
That's awesome.
Like that's so just amazing. Goes to show they had cameras so they could watch us if we tried to go steal any candy.
Put the Slurpee back.
They would literally call and be like, get Monica on the phone or get Jacqueline on the phone. You're supposed to put that away.
That's amazing.
So you learn not to try to steal the candy.
Yeah.
But,
so you're 14. They've basically said, nothing is working. This radiation, it's still spreading.
So basically at that point they said, let's try chemo. And my mom and dad were like, no. And so my parents are very religious. They went and, you know, kind of prayed and did their thing. And they came to the solution that they were just going to tell me I was better and stop all doctor's appointments.
Wow.
And just let me live out my life if that was like my path.
So the doctors told your parents she's going to die. And then your parents turned around and said, you're all better. You're healed.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
That's
so
amazing.
they told my parents I had less than about 18 months to live is what they assumed. 12 to 18 months. So I was 14 and a half. I had to tell about 16 maybe.
Yeah.
I hadn't been in school for 4 years. Hadn't been around kids in 4 years. I mean, because every time you would go through a treatment, there was a 2-week release of the radiation. So you couldn't be around people. So I was like isolated in my room at home. I couldn't even be around my siblings. So I had like a week between treatments where I could be around people. I was the most socially awkward person you'd ever met. I still have my moments where I'm like, I don't know how to talk to people.
Yeah.
But they put me back in school, in a new school, because we had moved, you know, during this time.
Yeah.
And I went into school not telling anybody anything about me having had cancer. I've started to talk about it more online, and there's been girls I was friends with that have come out and been like, I had no clue.
Yeah. Wow.
Like I had no clue you had cancer, let alone like terminal cancer.
Right.
They just thought I was awkward. or bitchy because I was so shy. Like I got that a lot. Like, oh, I just thought you were bitchy. I'm like, no, I just didn't know how to.
I got that a lot too growing up. People always accused me of being stuck up. I was just terrified all the time.
Yeah. You're like, I was just scared of you. So for that whole time, so for about 2 to 3 years, it was almost 3 years, I was still seeing all my holistic practitioners.
Yeah.
So I had, a kinesiologist, a masseuse, a reflexologist, a holistic healer, a shaman, all these things that would come into my house after school every day. I had an appointment. Like I knew I had to go home.
Wow.
Sometimes I'd do my homework during the appointment because they would just do their thing while I was doing it. But my afternoons were with somebody, like some
doing
sort
treatments.
of healer. Yeah.
And you were living where at this point?
St. George.
In St. George. Okay.
So,
All right.
so my parents just told me, oh, this is just preventative. We just want to keep your body healthy. They didn't indicate that it was like still. But what was funny is I was in tune enough to know that wasn't true. But we all just played the game of like, no, it's gone.
Wow.
Because I could tell with my reflexologist when he'd be breaking down tumors or he'd be breaking down, you can feel that. Like there's no denying it. It's very real.
Feel it.
But, the words that were spoken, the sentiment behind it was always, you're fine. Your body's healing or healed. It's all good. And so then when I was 17, right after my 17th birthday, they decided we're going to go see a doctor just to get one more scan.
Yeah.
Because at this point you'd made it 3 years and they're like, well, geez, this is twice as long as they said she would make it. Yeah. So might as well check, right?
Yeah. So we go back to the doctor and his response upon us walking in was, I can't believe she's still alive.
Sometimes I wish doctors would just keep their mouth shut.
Yeah.
Because they can say some of the most damning stuff ever.
Well,
and it's so traumatizing.
It's like they have no clue about social cues.
And like, luckily for some of us, we've been grounded enough to be able to take those words and erase them or move them away or not let them absorb. But so many people don't know how to do that.
Don't, because they're terrified. They're terrified for their lives. And then doctors say something like that and it just triggers them in the wrong direction.
And the doctor is, in this case, to so many people, God, quote unquote. Like the doctor's telling me I'm sick, I'm dying, I'm sick, I'm dying.
Totally.
Like versus like, no, a doctor is just a person. They are not the determining factor of whether or not I'm going to live or die. They can tell me what they've been told in school. That's all they can tell me.
Yep.
And like, thank goodness my parents had implemented that into my psyche by this point, because hearing him say that, I was kind of like,
you're like, whoa, that's weird.
Wait a second.
Super weird.
I'm supposed to be dead.
I don't want to see you either.
Right. Right. I don't even want to be here. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So they did a scan then and it was virtually all gone. There was a couple small spots left, but when you see the scan from when I was 14 to the scan when I'm 17, like the one is just everywhere. In the 17, I've got a couple of spots. So we did one last small third dose of radiation at 17. But because most of my healing did not come from a traditional doctor, on my medical records, it's still not remission because they can't, they don't feel comfortable saying that because it wasn't through their methods.
So like, you officially still have cancer.
I still have cancer.
Like today, you're saying. What?
I was just actually at my annual midwife appointment and I could see the computer screen. It says active neoplasm of thyroid.
Even though there's nothing on a scan.
There's nothing.
Like they can't see a single thing.
That's fine. Let them think that.
That's totally fine. Yeah. They can have that.
They have to believe that. They have to. Their worldview demands it.
Yeah. Otherwise it would shatter into a million pieces.
Well, yeah, because they can't say, well, I did it or this treatment did it, or because the guy literally said to my parents, well, what have you been doing? Where were you taking her for treatment? And they said, we just took her home and loved her and told her she was better and we fed her healthy and we took care of her soul basically.
Yes.
And he was just like, that doesn't work.
Except it did.
And it works
so
all the time.
It says in my medical record that I had to have been getting treatment somewhere outside of the United States.
Are you kidding me?
Wow. So of course, your family lied. That's the only answer. There's no, oh goodness.
So, and okay, wow. I'm still processing everything you're telling me right now because it's so amazing. And it just like what your parents did is like the motto of my life of where thoughts go, energy flows,
Yep.
And I truly believe that if you are saying, I am fighting cancer, you're always going to be battling. But I remember Tristan, he would always correct me and I'd be like, what was it? I would say,
you would say you have cancer, basically. That was what you said. And I would correct you and say, no, had.
Yes. And it took me a while to change that shift. Right. And so but I truly believe that it just like your experience, what Tristan did when we scanned him a year ago is considered impossible, right? Like, no, the natural therapies can't be working. What people don't people see the chambers, people see the ozone sauna, they see the nutrition that we're eating online. What they don't see is the mental healing that has to happen.
And that is
the deprogramming.
90% of the work. 90% of the work happens spiritually, emotionally.
Exactly what I wanted to say.
Yes.
It does matter what you're putting into your body, but that's almost a fraction.
Yes.
That's a 5% of the total cure.
Yep.
90% is what you're telling yourself.
Yes.
And
honestly,
others are telling you.
Even that 5-10% is the result of where your thoughts are, right? Because you wouldn't be putting that into your body. You wouldn't be saying no to the fast food, the really tasty candy, if you didn't believe that saying no to that was good
Healing
for you
you.
and healing you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
But if you're constantly battling cancer and you're terrified and then I just hated our appointments with the oncologist. I hated the scanxiety, right?
Exactly.
That's what they call it, the scanxiety. I mean, every time he would get tested, I would be sick for up to a month.
I'm sure.
That's how and so I can't imagine what he was going through. You know what I mean? And so what we literally tell people is we emancipated ourselves from the medical community. We couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
That experience was killing us.
Yeah.
More so than the chemotherapy, more so than the radiation.
Well, I tell people this all the time. I may have even said it on the podcast, but the day of my last scan, I got really sick, literally came down with a really bad cold. And my toenails went so funky. And I know this is a really weird thing that happened, but my toenails went all nasty and rigid and jagged. And you can see the mark on my nails as it's been growing out. That kind of indicates that day. That's how I know how long it's been since that scan. It's crazy.
Makes sense,
So let's get back to your story though. So your parents, because I know people are dying to know all the kinds of treatments. So you said shamans, reflexologists, foot zoners.
Yeah. So foot zoner, that was probably one of my biggest. I mean, he would come in 2 to 3 times a week.
Wow.
And
how did your mom pick him?
she just fell into it.
How did they find him down in St. George in 1990?
St. George is a really strange hub of really holistic / spiritual / crunchy people.
Is that true?
I think it's because of the mount, you've got Zion, you've got all these natural beauties around. And so I think there is some truth to that.
This is me going a little woo woo, but I really think there's a lot of spiritual energy in St. George. And we were actually talking before the podcast, that's why I moved to the mountains. Cause I feel like there's a lot of spiritual ancient energy here. And that's why I was I just have to get here. I just need to, when I drive home every day, it's I'm coming home to a sanctuary. So sorry, I cut you off though.
And that's exactly what we were talking about before the podcast. My parents had the option of coming up to Salt Lake, which was where all my treatments were being done at the time.
Okay.
But they were they'd never been to St. George, but they were drawn to St. George and they felt into that. And,
amazing.
And so we ended up there kind of overnight.
Wow.
It was one day to the next we moved. And I think I told you this, but we were supposed to be moving to Argentina a year prior. And that's when they found my cancer and all these things. But to that point, everybody has a different healing space.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important for people's homes to be their healing sanctuaries. And so many people live in chaos and in places that don't bring them peace.
Yeah.
And they wonder why they're so full of depression and anxiety and all of these things. And a lot of times it does come down to your home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is your home to you? If your home is full of, fighting and, your kids fighting. And a lot of that comes down to how your body feels. And I mean, it's such a circle. I do real estate for a living now, which is so funny because I never wanted to have a career where I had to speak to people because I'm so awkward.
And you're totally not, by the way.
That's literally your life is being a socialite, right?
So now I have to like be extroverted for work, but then as soon as work's done, then I'm home and I'm by myself.
Yeah. Recharging.
Yeah, recharging.
For the next time you have to interact with people.
But like I've taken my career and tried to make it something more than just finding a house. For me, helping connect people to the proper healing space or their sanctuary or the place that they need to be for their mental, emotional, physical healing is so important. And so many people don't even know that they're missing that.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's interesting when you get sick with something major, how much your home plays into that. Like how much your space and what you surround yourself with plays into that.
Totally.
And like even with design and stuff, like I tell people, you know, bring things into your home that speak to you. Don't just buy something from Target because it's cool.
Yeah.
Like what does that do for you?
Yeah.
Like if you walked into my house, it's like crystals everywhere. I love sage everywhere. My kids have crystals all over their nightstands.
So great.
Like, but that's what speaks to me. That's what heals us.
Yeah.
And we seal and protect our home every day. Like we sage it. All these things. And my kids have been raised in that. So they're comfortable now walking around the house, saging the doors. And
that's so great.
And I think, you know, if we can make our homes a healing space, like that's
then we heal.
So important because we can heal anything in that space.
Well, and even more so than homes, relationships. Like if you need to cut yourself off from people that are toxic to you, relationships that are toxic to you, like that's so important because nothing is more valuable than your health and your wellness, you know, and,
or put in the work to fix the relationship,
to fix
right?
it, yes.
Where possible.
If possible, absolutely. Because fixing those relationships are so much more rewarding. But you can't, so I just want to say this, you can't do the emotional work for you and that other person too. Yeah. So take that to an account. Like if they can't show up for you and transform and heal with you, then you can't drag them across that bridge. It's just not going to happen. Right. And so I do, because I feel like as women, we feel like it's our duty to please everyone, to be friends with everyone, to like put our own backs on the line to make sure everyone else is happy. And what I want to tell you women out there, because I think primarily our audience is women, like you don't have to do that. Like you need to protect yourself. You need to put yourself first and create boundaries. You know, like even this morning, like I was telling my friend Nicole, I'm like, it is so hard creating boundaries with my children. You know, even with them, like they want me to play with them on demand. They want me to get them food on demand. They want me to, you know, stop everything I'm doing on demand to appease their needs. And the hardest thing I've had to learn is, yes, sweetie, as soon as I'm done, I'll see to your attention. Like I'll see to your needs, you know? So even creating boundaries with our children, healthy boundaries, you know, we don't have to like lash out, but I just want people to be really, really gentle with themselves when it comes to creating healing spaces and healing relationships.
Well, and I think that's so important to do prior to us ever having to get sick,
yes.
right? Like,
oh my gosh,
we
yes.
can prevent so much of this if we're actively doing those things, and those things are practically free.
Yes. Yes.
Where once we're sick and we're in that phase,
everything's expensive.
Yeah, everything's expensive. So you can prevent so much by being proactive. Like don't wait until you get a diagnosis.
Exactly.
So on that topic, I've been really curious to know, to what do you attribute your parents' ability to do that? What had they done leading up to that experience that they were able to basically navigate the whole thing perfectly?
So one thing I'll say, my parents always made it a priority to like talk through things. And I think had they not had a solid foundation going into this, my dad could have very easily looked at my mom and been like, you're nuts.
Yeah.
You know, because it wasn't the way my dad was raised. My dad was raised on a cattle farm, like straight up cowboy. And my mom's saying, you know, cow products are causing more issues for her. We have to cut out all animal product. I don't know. You guys have probably read the China study, but that came out kind of after all this started. And my mom had basically taken the approach that they take in that book of
Yeah.
like, I don't know where she had read it, but like that cow milk could mimic your body's hormones. And if it's a hormonal cancer, it can cause it to multiply really fast.
Yeah.
So she cut all that out. I mean, and you're talking about a farmer. My dad's like a farmer, and my mom's like, no,
Right.
that's all bad.
Yeah.
You know, and so
Yeah.
So he had to trust her a lot.
I had to trust my mom.
Are you still vegan or vegetarian today?
So I'm not straight. No, I eat meat now more. But it's usually like organic. I'll do like bison, salmon a lot. My kids, it's funny enough, my son basically from the time he was born decided he was vegetarian.
Wow.
Anytime you would put meat or an animal product in his plate, he would chuck it across the room.
Oh my gosh.
And I'd ask his pediatrician, like, is this normal? He's like, I've never heard of a self-proclaimed 1-year-old vegetarian, but like, what are you going to do?
Right. Exactly.
But so no, I try to just make sure what we eat is clean.
Yes.
I try to find balance in everything.
Totally.
That's one thing I've learned is if you are too over the top with things, you'll drive yourself crazy, and you driving yourself crazy is going to make you sick.
True. So true.
I mean, and I'm a single mom. So like for me, there's got to be so much balance in like what I do. Otherwise what we eat takes up, 90% of my day. And then I'm like, oh wait, I got to go work. So I've just tried to find this like level of balance. And like, I mean, my kids have been raised in a way that I give them a little bit of option, but not too much. Like, I mean, on Halloween, they go trick-or-treating, they get all the candy. I leave it out. They don't eat it because they're just like, it doesn't make me feel good.
That's so great.
Wish I could say that about our
I know.
kids.
They know they feel sick after they eat it.
Yeah.
But not enough that
we have like this candy bucket that's like up on the shelf.
Yeah.
And it's funny because every few months I have to just chuck stuff because I'm like,
'Cause it goes
nobody
bad.
eats this.
That's so great. Yeah.
Because they don't ever get it down. But I mean, they have their things that aren't the best, like goldfish or something. But I'm like, it's about balance. Like if you freak them out at such a young age, like with me, my parents had to be so strict that like there was a phase when I was like, 18 to 21 where I was like, screw this, I'm going to eat whatever I want, because it was just like this weird, like I didn't ever get the choice almost. So like, as soon as it was like my decision, I mean, and I never ate that bad, but like it was more appealing for a minute.
Yeah.
And I think when you over restrict kids too much,
they're going to swing the other way and find some balance again.
or they go to their friend's house and they're like, I'm going to eat all the things.
Yes. Yeah.
But when
I
they
remember
know
doing
for
that.
themselves that it's not a good thing, then it's better. So it's guiding them with their intuition. Like that's what I
Totally.
try to do with my kids is we try to talk a lot about, well, what does this make you feel? Like for a second, it makes you feel good,
Yeah.
but then you don't feel good.
Yes.
And
Like
so they're aware.
empowering them with knowledge around their bodies. I think I said this in one of my other podcasts, but I feel like Tennyson has more body intuition than the average adult. Like he notices like when he'll say, sometimes my brain just makes me do things, because it's tired or, and you don't typically hear 5-year-olds utilize those kinds of words, And so teaching them now, like body intuition, educating them now about nutrition and food and like the chemistry of the body, it's so important. So I kind of want to get back to your story.
Okay.
So very minor spots when you were still a teenager.
Yeah.
And then you kept getting blood work, right?
So I kept getting blood work. And so the marker they were checking for my particular cancer was the thyroid globulin levels. And those when I was sick were like in the tens of thousands and then down into the thousands. And then by the time we got that treatment when I was 17, it had hit around 120 to 190 was where it was kind of sitting.
And can you tell listeners what a normal range is?
And normal range is between 0 and 31.8.
Okay.
And so mine just bounced around between there for 17 years. And so I would continually have every primary care doctor say, you need to go I talked to an endocrinologist and they think you still have cancer.
Gosh.
And I would have to educate them and say, if you want to look back at all my records,
Yeah.
this is actually maintenance level for me. And I've had every doctor ever say, you'll never be able to get this into a normal level. So for the last couple years, I've really been like consciously working on it and like working through like inner child stuff and working through things with a kinesiologist. And
so when you say working on it, you mean spiritually working on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you doing any treatments or it's mostly spiritual?
It's mostly just spiritual. So I have a kinesiologist
Amazing.
I see up in Salt Lake about every month or every couple weeks, depending on what's going on. But so he works with my body, talks to it. Like we figure things out. And I've been on like some supplements and some drops and tinctures and things.
I think listeners are going to want to know who this kinesiologist
So
is.
his name's Dr. Branham with Premier Wellness.
Okay.
He's amazing. My whole family goes to him for everything. I mean,
Very cool.
And what's amazing is so many of us don't realize that we are trapping emotion into our body, and that continues to hold these like little bits of whatever's happening, right? Like there's a reason why my levels were maintaining at a certain level, and it's because my inner child wasn't fully healed.
Right.
I hadn't fully said, you know what, you're safe and protected and I have you and you're going to be okay. Like I hadn't taken the time to actually go there because it was so scary for me.
Totally.
To put myself back in that place, because there was that small subconscious trigger where I was like, the second I would start putting myself there, I would get scared and be like, but what if I got it again? And like start thinking all the terrible things. So I would just avoid dealing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so he finally kind of has made me actually do it. And I think by nature and by, you know, some huge miracle, my daughter just so happened to be the exact same age this year that I was when this all happened. And to be able to physically see a representation of basically what I was in that moment, and to be able to hold her and say, you're fine, and work through that in my head. And she's very aware. She's very intuitive and clairvoyant, and she can read my thoughts like this. And
Amazing.
so she knows what's happening, and we're communicating about it. And so 2 weeks ago, I had my latest blood work done, and I sat with my kinesiologist the day before, and he said, you don't have nothing to be worried about. Because I always get extreme anxiety, like
Totally.
about these, because I always know the conversation I'm going to have with the doctor, because they're going to say, you need to go see this person and you need to do this and you probably need another treatment. And I have to be the one to be strong enough to say no. So my throat chakras had like started to close down already and all these things. And so he's like, let's work through that. So we start working on my throat chakra, and he looks at me, he's like, you're totally fine. I hope you know that you're totally fine. And I'm like, I know, but it's different to say that and then to like have to see these reports. And he's like, you're fine. And so I go get the blood work, and it comes back like almost immediately that day. And this is actually on Halloween night. I'm like putting my kids to bed.
So just like a couple weeks ago? Uh-huh.
And I have this long ritual with my kids at night, but I'm putting my son to bed, and he's kind of falling asleep. So I look on my phone at the My Health hub.
Yeah.
And for the first time ever, my thyroid levels had dropped to normal range.
Ooh,
Isn't that amazing?
that's awesome. Congrats.
I knew the punchline because you texted me, but so that's the part I'm
Well,
like,
I did it.
I get that text you almost immediately after, like the next day. I was like, I have to tell her.
yes.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That is incredible. Absolutely
kind of incredible, right?
So even the midwife called me and was just like, this is the first time I'd seen her, but I like warned her, right? I'm like, okay, it's going to come in at this, so don't freak out, like blah, blah, blah. She called me and she's like, everything's normal.
Yeah.
Like everything's normal. Like you're totally normal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's like, that's so exciting.
So amazing.
I'm
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
So I've got a question that it's maybe an obvious answer here, but you still have your thyroid?
No, so they
Okay.
fully removed it.
All right, so it is gone.
Yeah. So when I was 10, that was what they removed, was my full thyroid, and they scraped everything else. But yeah, so that night I called my parent. I mean, it was like 11 o'clock at night. I think they thought something was wrong when they answered the phone. And I'm like, I have to tell you something. And I think they were like prepared for me to be like, somebody's dying or something. And I told them, and my mom started crying.
So amazing.
And they were just like, well, we always knew you were better, but this is just like confirmation, you know, like 18 years of being told you still should be getting treatment. You still should be doing this. You still should be doing that. I mean, but everything in my life has just been one big miracle after another.
Yeah.
Like the kids not being sick. And so with them, like I don't know how aware you guys are of like the whole story of Jesus and when he was born and like the frankincense and what that was meant for. But
I don't know what it was meant for.
Frankincense was meant to seal off the cords of illness and sickness from past generations.
Like the ancestral
line of illness.
That's cool.
I've never known that. And now I'm thinking like, oh, we need that.
So frankincense was a huge part of like my healing. My parents used
like the oil, or did you like, okay. Mm-hmm.
But like beyond that, so like with my kids, I spent years like mentally and emotionally like preparing my body and saying, when these kids come, we were not going to pass these generational lines down. Like we're going to stop that and heal it and stop it with me. Mm-hmm. And, you know, once again, I was told, A, you'll never have kids. B, if they come, they'll be really sick.
Yeah.
And I was married at the time and we didn't prevent trying to have a baby for over 5 years. And I had this vision. And I woke up and told my then husband, like, we're going to have a little girl. She's going to be curly haired. She's going to be sassy as can be.
Wow.
And he was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
And 4 weeks later, we found out we were pregnant.
Amazing.
And
oh my gosh.
So like, and she is the epitome of health and happiness and all of these things.
So I just really want to point out right now, like, you and your parents for years are creating a narrative. Mainstream medicine is creating another narrative. Mm-hmm. I want listeners out there, if you haven't gone through this cancer journey, and I hope you never do, like how hard the battle of the stories is in your life. Like, because we have so much like subconscious, we give so much authority subconsciously to doctors that if they say something, even though you don't want to believe it and you know that they're just a person, there's some part of you that puts them on a God platform and like subconsciously you take that message to heart. So for you, for years, listening to these doctors saying, you still have cancer, you still need to get tested, you still need to do radiation. And then you having to rewrite your own story. And we talk about creating our stories a lot. Mm-hmm. Like, so you rewriting your story, you're living your story, you're trying to completely sever ties to all the other stories these godlike complexes are trying to tell you. And what I mean by that, I mean the doctors.
Exactly.
You know, that takes an enormous amount of energy, an enormous amount of self-discipline, an enormous amount of like intuition and healing.
And lest you doubt us, dear listeners, there is actually a story going on right now that illustrates just how bad this situation can get. I wish I had my phone on me so I could look up details, but if you ever just go look up the hashtag Bring Noah Home, there's this absolutely heartbreaking story of this couple and their child who was diagnosed with some kind of leukemia, and they were at Johns Hopkins down in Florida at a children's Johns Hopkins hospital. And the doctors told them, you need to do this chemo treatment, whatever protocol. But the hospital was so terrible. They have 30 documented instances of how they were mistreated and neglected at this hospital. And of course, they were not happy about that.
Who was mistreated and neglected?
This family. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The family with the child who was diagnosed with leukemia.
Yeah.
And so they were not obviously thrilled about being told what to do in this situation. They said, we want to get a second opinion.
Oh, yeah. I know this family.
Just for challenging the doctors at this hospital, the doctors, seeing their power being threatened, decided that they were going to take custody away from this family. So they called Child Protective Services, whatever the agency is in Florida, and this couple has their child taken away from them.
Right.
This happened way back in like June, May, something like that. To this day, they still don't have their child back.
It's devastating.
And all they did was ask for a second opinion. All right. These are not parents that said, no, we're going to forego treatment.
Yeah.
These were not parents who said, we don't want to vaccinate. They literally just said, you've been jerks to us. We want to talk to another hospital. Mm-hmm. And that was all it took.
Isn't that awful?
And now they're having their family ripped apart. Like, it's terrible.
That's the power that they have. Like, that's the power that these doctors, like, they physically have power over you. They have emotional power over you. Legal power over you.
They did when I was 14, when they wanted to do that chemo, they threatened my parents with legal action, like to take custody of me because my parents were refusing to come back and see them.
Wow.
And I don't think it went very far because my parents basically were just like, no.
Right.
Fortunately,
I wonder,
right?
Yeah.
I wonder if that happened today. If they would have taken you away.
It probably depends on the hospital and probably depends on the doctor that you get. But that's this idea of challenging the authorities, challenging the power that wants us to be unquestioning sheep. It's not just a personal thing. It's a political thing.
It is.
Because the more they get away with it, the more they believe that they can continue to get away with it.
That they are God.
Right?
Yeah.
Every single one of us that challenges that, even if it's just to ask another question, that weakens their stranglehold on power. And that brings more power back to the people who are supposed to hold it, which is us, right? The patients, the clients, the individuals, the families, the parents.
Totally.
Well, even my last, because I just have been having an OBGYN run my annual testing, my blood work. And my last one, the reason why I'm now with a midwife, she was like, if you don't go see an endocrinologist, basically she was trying to force me into having to go see somebody else because she didn't feel like I was taking my health
seriously.
And I was like, no, you're not. I've been dealing with this since I was 10. Don't tell me that you know my health's better than I do.
Right. Well, and even given your history, it's like you have fought this off for 25 years. Who are you to say you're not doing it correctly when doctors gave you 18 months? Who the heck do you think you are that you think all of a sudden, because I'm in the room with you, you know better than me?
Exactly.
When I've had my body since I was born and I've been dealing with this for more than almost 2/3 of my life.
You've seen me a total of 20 minutes, but you know more.
That blows my mind. Blows my mind. Now I'm getting really angry and I should calm down.
So let's bring it back to the other side of that, which is that the reason why we want the power back in your hands as the patient, the individual, the parent, whatever it is because you know your body. You may have been taught not to trust it, right? You may be like me where you had your intuition completely erased from you while you were growing up, stripped away. Exactly. But it doesn't mean it's gone. Right. And when people are able to get back in touch with that, like Monica has done, which is such a beautiful thing, you are able to basically facilitate miracles. That's what it is. You've had so many miracles in your life, Monica, but it's only because you and your parents put in the work to make that possible.
We know a guy who has ALS and they say he's a walking miracle. And it's like, you have no idea how much work he's put in to create that miracle. Like when we hear these cancer stories and like, oh my gosh, it's like spontaneous remission. It's like, you have no idea what these people have done to create that. Yeah. Because what you're just reading is sentence. You're missing the hours, the months, the years worth of emotional work, physical work, spiritual work, food work. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what I say is like, you need to create your miracle. You have to bring it to you. You don't just sit there and be like, okay, I'm waiting. Like it doesn't work that way. No. Like that power is in you. Like it's your God-given ability to create that. Because I really think spiritually, we are co-creators in this life. You know, life doesn't just happen to you. You help manifest it. You help work it. You help attract things to yourself. And so when we're in these instances, you have to use all your energy, all your manifesting energy and abilities and capabilities to bring into your life what you want. So again, going back to my whole thing, where thoughts go, energy flows.
Exactly. Yeah. So growing up every year, instead of making like New Year's resolutions, it would be like writing down manifestations of what your year would be like, but you speak them in terms of it's done.
Love it.
So like,
I like that.
I'm so like, let's see, we're coming up on 2020. So like January 1, 2020, I would write a letter as of January 1, 2021 that says, this year, I'm so grateful that this happened and that happened. And one of the things in there was that my levels were normal for this year. Amazing. You know, I mean, I write everything in there, like trips I want to take my kids on or things that don't seem attainable. My home was one where I was like, there's no way I can afford it this year, but I wrote it into there. And we closed on the house December 15th of that year. Like,
Amazing.
Wow.
it's just, there's so much to be said for what we put into the universe. And if we do use this negative talk with ourselves, with our children, with our spouses, with whoever is around us, that's what you're going to get. Totally. Like you can write down the great words, but if you're not speaking those words and you're using the negative talk for yourself,
totally,
your soul doesn't know what you actually want.
Yep. All it sees is negativity. Yep.
And the thing is that you can put in the work, and if you have the negativity, it's just work.
Yeah.
Right. You're battling upstream when you do that.
Exactly.
But when you combine the putting in the work with the getting into that positive frame of mind, that already abundant mindset, it feels good. It's so natural. It's effortless.
Well, because the soul doesn't communicate through words. It communicates through vibration. It communicates through energy. That's just the theories of Janique, but, and
we buy into it.
There you go, but and so you can have all the right words, but if you vibrationally aren't matching that, then you're not drawing it to you.
And it's not just words, it's even actions. You can be going through the motions, but if you're not getting it up in the head, in your heart, then it's not going to bring fruit.
Yeah, if it's not penetrating every cell in your body.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah.
I read something the other day, and I can't remember what book it was, but it basically said your cells will turn over every 7 years. So be careful what you're doing with those cells every 7 years. And it's interesting because I thought about it in terms of, so 7 years ago would have been when my son was 1. And so I've basically given my body a 7-year break from changes of dramatic impact, pregnancy or whatnot. And over those 7 years, I took that time to try to make it a positive. And I've really worked on my meditating and my, spiritual being and all of these things. And 7 years later, here we are. And my levels are all normal. There's something to be said for that. And what you do with that 7 years is, up to you.
Yeah, totally. This whole podcast has been amazing.
Yeah, this has been so absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me come on.
Before we do end though, I do want to say, you guys, so I know I make it sound like it's so easy to do this and, it's you just get into the right frequency, but it's so hard to override that subconsciousness. And so I just want to share what I used for myself, and maybe you guys can share what you worked for you. But I remember when I was in such a state of trauma that I had to use the same affirmations over and over again. So every time I was triggered, I had to listen, and I didn't even have the bandwidth to create my own manifestations. So I had to listen to something on YouTube. And so I would listen to it daily. And it was 2 hours long because that's all I could do to help me not marinate in this negative self-talk of doom and gloom. And so when I started getting triggered, I would put these affirmations on and I would just listen to it over and over. And I'd say it out loud. And then I say some of it in my mind. And after about a month or two, as soon as I got triggered, I just put that on and I immediately would my state would alter completely. And then there was another thing that I did while doing that. I started doing a course by Tony Robbins. They have on the phone app or whatever. And he has this 15 minutes or his hour of power. But the 15 minutes, it was this breath work. And then you're walking and you're saying things like every day in every way, I'm feeling better and better. Every day in every way, I'm getting healthier and healthier. And so as I would walk around the neighborhood, I would march around and say that over and over and over until it just became this prayer. And it it synced with my energy of my walk, my heartbeat, my tempo. And then the trauma got less and less and less the more and more I practiced that. So that's just something I utilized. I don't know if that manifests with anyone else. What is it that you guys have done? Because you guys were the ones that had cancer. And I know there's probably a lot of people listening today that have cancer or had cancer or have a loved one that has cancer. What did you guys do?
I'll go first and then I'll let you go, Monica. I've done a lot of things and it is kind of an evolving process, always sort of just moving into the next thing that feels right. But two really important things that have helped me a ton. One of them, Abraham Hicks, which I think we've talked about before.
Yeah.
It kind of weird, but that's okay because it works really well for me. I love it. Abraham Hicks, go YouTube it. There's all kinds of videos, but it's really about getting in the right frame of mind. It's seeing the universe, seeing yourself, seeing the world around you in a way that promotes healing, promotes happiness, promotes whatever it is you want. Another one that's really been helpful for me, give a shout out to Candy Graves. She's a practitioner here in Utah, and she does this. It's kind of a trauma release process that has just been absolutely incredible for me. So I think she's fantastic.
How can people reach Candy?
I don't know. Candy Graves. I don't have my phone, so I'm kind of useless with data right now.
So you guys can just, or reach out to us.
You could literally, I believe her business is called As You Think You Are. So if you go to Facebook and search for As You Think You Are, Candy with a K, you'll find her, but she's great.
Cool. Monica, what was it that you did?
Oh man. So I think for me, meditation's been huge. Kind of like what you said with the manifestations, the thought processes. Anytime I'm triggered, I just say I live a life of abundance of health, happiness, love, and wealth. So I don't have to worry about, how being a single mom, how am I going to pay my bills, or being a cancer survivor, how am I going to continue to maintain health? It's just, it is. And that I think has helped a lot. And I've trained my kids to do that as well. Another one is practicing gratitude. I have a journal. It's called the 5-minute journal. I think you can find it on Amazon, but it has prompt questions and like a positive thought at the top. And so you're supposed to write like the 3 things you're grateful for every morning when you wake up and when you go to bed. And I think just remembering in those moments when we're allowing anxiety and the depths of pain or whatever you're dealing with in that day to take over, that there's always things to be grateful for, even when you're super sick, even when you're, dealing with treatments or kids or whatever it is that you're dealing with. If you're practicing gratitude, it does something for your body. It does something for your mind. Another big one is just working out, getting up and using my body and saying, I'm grateful that I can do this.
Yes.
There was a time I couldn't do it. So to be able to do that every day, like there was a point where, when my kids were home, I would feel like I shouldn't work out because that's taking away from them. And then what I finally came to an understanding of me practicing love for my body by working out and showing it gratitude that it works also shows my kids to be grateful for their bodies and to put that effort into their bodies too. So for me, those are, I think, the biggest, is just to make sure that we're practicing a lot of gratitude and manifesting and being intentional with our thoughts. Yes. And it's not easy. Like you said, the work has not been easy. It has not been an easy 25 years.
No, for sure.
But it could have been so much harder, right? Yeah. Like with a different mindset.
Totally.
Is it fair to say it's also been a joyful 25 years?
Yeah. And I think once again, that comes back to like, people find it funny how close I am to my kids sometimes, like friends and stuff, because I like prefer being with them over anybody, but it's because I have so much gratitude for them being in my lives. Yes. Like I have so much gratitude for my parents and for my siblings. Like my best friends are my sisters. Like it's where we put our effort and our energy is where we're drawn and where we're happiest. And I just think it's just, I wouldn't change anything. Somebody said, do you ever wish you didn't get sick?
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing to say, right? Like, it's the same, like, do you ever wish you didn't get divorced, or do you ever, well, no, because I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be physically here with you guys right now. It wouldn't be like, I don't know what my life would be.
Yep.
And I'm grateful for what it is now.
Yes.
And I think as long as we live in the moment and are grateful for the moment, we don't have to fear what's coming, but we can be like proactive.
Totally proactive. I've had people ask us that too. And I wonder it myself, like without the cancer, where would we be? And it's so hard. It's so hard to to put yourself in that space.
For me, there's no question whatsoever. I would not take it back.
And you see, and I'm the opposite, where I'm like, I really liked living blissfully, like secure.
There was some blissful ignorance, I suppose, but I wouldn't take it back for anything in the world, because where we are right now, this is what I've always wanted for my life. Well, and I wouldn't have this.
And the truth to that, though, is if you wouldn't have gone through it then, when would you have gone through it?
Right.
Like, because 1 in 2 people now is going to get cancer.
Yes,
right.
actually.
So like, if we're able to get it in a phase of life where we're mentally and emotionally capable of handling it, and we are able to come out on the other side and be able to be a force for good for others, like that's driven me. So these last few weeks, my kinesiologist said to me, your throat chakra keeps closing up. You have some big next step that your body's trying to make you take, and you're scared. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, do you know what it is? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, what? And I said, I've known for years that my purpose, I'm alive for a purpose.
Yeah.
And that purpose is to try to help other kids that go through what I've gone through, and to help those families find alternative treatment. Because so many parents go into that and they are so sideswiped from their blissful ignorance life that they don't know how to start researching this. I'm blessed that my mom was raised in a situation where she was aware of these things, and she had a constant awareness. And so it was an instant for her to just turn it around and start. But for so many of these parents, their kids get sick and the shoe drops and they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And they're just looking to this godlike doctor to tell them how to fix the situation or what to do. And they don't know that they have the power to save their child.
Or that there are other tools to do it too.
Exactly. And there are so many other tools. And so my goal, and I'm putting this out there now through the podcast, and it's scary to even speak it.
It's in the universe now.
Still working, but I want to start a foundation for terminally ill
that's awesome.
kids.
I love that.
So to be able to help pay for, the alternative treatments, and to be able to help guide their parents in what best treatments for their kid, for their situation. And so I've been working with a few practitioners to start like a group of practitioners that would help support that. And they would kind of kick back some to the foundation. The foundation would work with them on these kids. And so it's a big undertaking, and I'm sure it won't be easy, and I'm sure it won't be fast, but if anybody listening has any
connections. So if serendipitously there is someone out there who feels like they've got a piece of the puzzle for you, how can they get in touch with you?
My Instagram handle is at Monica_Nicole, NICHOLE, or my email address is just Monica@monicadraper.com.
Awesome. Monica@monicadraper.com. All right. So anyone out there listening to this going, I can help. I know something. I know someone.
The ball is rolling.
Get in touch.
And I want it to happen. Like I have it in my, like, I know it's there, and I know I've been shutting it down, and I know now's the time to really put it in full force, because there are so many kids getting sick every day, and these poor parents are so overwhelmed, and I'm becoming more aware of them. And like, I'm so empathic that I sense so many people like in a room. I can tell you, like, this kid over here is starting to struggle. Like it's starting to overwhelm my soul a little bit. And I'm like, okay,
like, I need to do something about this.
All right. I get it.
That's so great.
On that note, if people want a real estate agent that has a really incredible sense of intuition and is empathic,
I would love
can they get in touch with you the same way? Monica at Monica Draper?
Yeah. Or my number is 435-313-7905. And even if people just need to call and talk to somebody that understands what they're going through, like, I am happy, like, what you guys do of just advocating to like help people.
Yes. I just want moms that are listening right now, like, to know, like, what Monica's mom did was more powerful than what all the doctors did combined. And like, that is you. Like, she's no one special. Like, go and listen to my episode about uncredentialed women. You don't need to go to med school to do these things, you guys. Like, the power is in you, and you just need to take it. And the point of this podcast is to mirror that to people so that they can hear stories like this and be like, what, I can do that? And it's like, yes, you absolutely can. And so your mom is just, she's such a badass.
She's an angel.
Like so amazing. And I want you women to feel brave. You know, it's okay. It's okay to go against the authority. If your soul, if your intuition is telling you something else.
Well, and I think that's the scariest part, right? We're raised in this culture where you're not supposed to have a voice.
Right.
Like you're supposed to listen to the authority and in so many ways, like there's, around us, there's a lot of authority and to be able to step out and say, no, that's not my truth.
Yeah.
And you might think that, but that doesn't mean it's true for me.
Totally.
And I think keeping your chakras open is a very important thing because you can't help others if you can't help yourself.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, that's so true.
Keep your chakras open. Take your power back.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Monica. This was awesome.
It was fantastic. Oh my gosh.
I am really excited to get this out to
I told you it would be.
I told you guys I was terrified. I was like doing throat chakra clearing the whole way down.
This was fantastic. You flowed like you had done this a million times.
Well, thank you, because I was a little nervous.
No, you shouldn't have been. You were amazing. This has got to be one of my most favorite episodes we've ever recorded. Because your stories.
As long as it helps at least one person, it's worth it.
It will.
Absolutely will. No
Thanks,
question.
you guys. Thanks for listening.
You.
Until next week.
Talk to you next time.